Action items. We have 7 Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie.
7A, resolution by the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust recommending the Board of County Commissioners waive competitive bidding procedures pursuant to Section 5.03D of the Home Rule Charter and Section 2-8.1 of the County Code by a two-thirds vote of the board members present, and ratifying a confirmation purchase for the provision of transportation services from February 28, 2022 to February 27, 2023 at the hourly rate of $55.98 and disinfecting services at a fixed amount of $9 per vehicle for a total contract amount not to exceed $9,131,772 with Limousines of South Florida, Inc., and authorize the county mayor or county mayor's designee to execute the agreement and to effectuate the same and exercise all provisions contained therein. 7A. Would you like me to read all three at this time?
Let's go ahead and read all.
7B, resolution by the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust recommending the Board of County Commissioners authorize designated purchase pursuant to Section 2-8.1B3 of the County Code by a two-thirds vote of the board members present, authorizing additional expenditure authority in a total amount up to $3,050,000 for a total modified allocation amount of $48,155,000 for contract number SS1245-3/27-2 to Schindler Elevator Corporation for the purchase of elevator and escalator maintenance and repair services for the Department of Transportation and Public Works, and authorize the county mayor or county mayor's designee to exercise all provisions of the contract, including any cancellation, renewals, or extensions pursuant to County Code Section 2-8.1 and Implementing Order 3-38. 7A and 7B, no surtax funds are requested. 7C, as amended by the Personnel Committee. Resolution by the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust approving the chair's evaluation of the executive director and recommendations contained therein as provided by the bylaws of the trust. 7A, 7B, and 7C.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Let's start with 7A. There is no surtax funds involved. Also, I did have a question, Mr. Attorney. If we did not vote for this resolution, it doesn't change the requirement that the commission has to vote two-thirds to approve it. Is that correct?
This is the unique instance in which it would have required a two-thirds either way because it is a waiver of formal competitive bidding, which requires two-thirds vote by the board. So, correct. There's a slight difference in the sense that if there's a negative recommendation by the CITT, it requires two-thirds vote of the entire membership of the board, which is actually 9 votes, as opposed to two-thirds of who happens to be sitting at the dais at that time. Yeah, I don't believe so. I think if there's negative recommendation. So, but to answer your question, Mr. Chairman, it is two-thirds either way, if depending upon whether it's two-thirds of the whole membership as opposed to just two-thirds of whoever happens to be there.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to get that clarified. All right, members, any discussion on 7A? Yes, ma'am. Go right ahead.
Okay, so I have a couple things. My first question is I want to clarify that 7A is about a contract with Limousines of South Florida for 22 county routes. Is that correct? I don't know who's the right person to answer that.
I'm going to defer to the department to answer questions about the contract.
Oh, the director's here.
Yes, that's correct. This is for extending the existing contract we have for a year to cover those 22 routes that are currently being run by this operator today.
Okay, and how many currently today total county routes are there? Like 200, 300?
There's 99 total county routes.
And the ones that aren't operated by Limousine South Florida are operated by one other, two other, how many other types of operators?
So this is the only contracted service that we have for county-owned routes. The rest are run by the county.
Okay, and then I don't know this question. You might not be director, the person. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. There's one other route. I'm sorry. Actually, there's 2 other routes. The 301 and 302 service of the Keys. That's operated by a separate vendor. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. And you might not be the right person to answer this one, or maybe you do know this, or maybe the person from LSF who spoke earlier knows, for the City of Miami trolley, is LSF the sole contracted service provider for all of those routes in the City of Miami?
Yes.
Okay, and then for the 22 county routes, does LSF provide the buses, or is it LSF drivers driving county fleet buses? Sorry, I want to make sure I understand what
Yeah,
exactly
so
we're talking about here.
LSF provides the vehicles as well as the drivers.
For the 22 county routes.
That's correct.
And then for the City of Miami, they provide the vehicles and the drivers for all of the city trolley routes.
For
The City of Miami.
the City of Miami contract, I believe the City of Miami purchased those vehicles separately.
Okay. Okay. The reason I asked is so, by way of background, since 2016, either myself, my husband, or both of us have been riding on the City of Miami trolley daily, particularly the Coral Wave route. We ride the other ones, but that's the one that we were using or are using for commuting. And I have to say, I have not ridden on, as far as I know, the 22 existing county LSF routes, but the City of Miami service, like, I'm not saying, Mr. Martinez's experience is not true or Ms. Rivera's is, but my experience is unreliable. The app is off. The trolley drivers don't stop where they're supposed to stop. They blow by you even if you are not disabled. I can't imagine if it's worse. I can't imagine it's worse if you are. I have been on trolleys with the City of Miami where there are people in wheelchairs on them, so I'm not saying they never stop for anybody, but it's really problematic. And in the past, part of it I think has been the vehicle itself, because it has those, or a lot of them had these 3-4 steps that you have to get into, which obviously you can't use a wheelchair for, and it had this back lift that you had to use. But the drivers are always very much in a rush. I'm not sure what the quality of their, work life is, because one used to stop at a Starbucks on 27th Avenue every morning to use the restroom. I don't know why that was a thing that person needed to do. In any event, I appreciate what you're saying in terms of the successes that you've had in the county on those 22 routes. But from my personal experience, I do have concerns about the companies, and I don't know who's, whether it's the vehicle, whether it's the company or what, but I will say, as, just another data point, not, anecdotal, of course, it hasn't been the most reliable service. And I often end up riding the county bus, which is not run, it sounds like, LSF. It's run by DTPW. But thank you.
And I can certainly appreciate the anecdotal experience. I think that's important. I think from our perspective, and again, this is a different contract in the City of Miami. The city provides the vehicles. Some of those vehicles are at or beyond sort of the age that you would hope for that kind of vehicle. But what I can tell you is that pursuant to this contract with Miami-Dade County, we provide monthly reports. There's data regarding on-time performance. There's data regarding complaints, and over a period of many years, and essentially millions of, or we'll say a significant amount, millions is probably a bit too high, of passengers, the numbers really in any measurable metric show that LSF is exceeding the contract requirements.
And I think in your comments you made, did you give a figure for the number of riders who were disabled? Was that you?
Yes, it was. So
was that for the 22 county routes then?
Correct.
Okay. And what time period again? I apologize.
So I know that every month of this year of 2022, there have been in excess of 400 wheelchair boardings per month, and the most recent complete month would be the month of April, and we had 403 wheelchair boardings during that month.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Any other members have questions? Comments?
Yeah,
Okay.
I do.
Mr. Chair,
Is it appropriate for comment?
Yes.
In view of the fact that there seems to be, granted only maybe 3 people, difference of opinion about service, I have to say I've not personally used this service that I know of, but Member Street certainly has. And in looking at this and hearing what our attorney says, I think that should we not pass this resolution, I guess I am asking a question. What would be the downside for this possible, because it's very possible it's a good thing and should be passed, but that's really not up to us. So if we voted this down and it did require 2/3? 2/3 of the whole board of the BCC instead of those that happen to be at the meeting at that particular time. The only thing I can think of is I know there's no Board of County Commissioner meeting in August. That's off the table. But so do we know of any, reason why this would be a particular hardship, let's say, for either the company or the BCC to make this decision to have 2/3 of a vote of the entire BCC? Because it's been my experience that it's whoever's sitting at the table at the time. Some people may be in the back and they can't vote on that particular issue, or they're not there. And, it sounds like an important enough contract that I would think 2/3 of the whole BCC should make that decision.
Let me ask the director and maybe his staff. What would happen to the contracted routes if the contract was not approved?
So just in terms of a little background here. So again, this is a request to retroactively approve this service. The original term of the contract expired in February of this year. So this operator has been operating, providing the service for these 22 routes. If this does not get approved, we have no way to provide that service. So those 22 routes will go away. In total for those 22 routes, the ridership is around 3,500 or so. And if it doesn't get approved, then that service will stop and those people won't have a way to get around.
Okay, thank you. But before, now I don't know if this happened since you've been here. Getting a competitive bid process of this nature takes a bit of time and work. Didn't we know 2 years prior to that this type of service is not something that someone puts together in 6 weeks? So in terms of getting, did we have a bid and they were the only ones who submitted? Is this what happened?
So there is right now another item that will be going through the board for approval for a new 5-year contract to provide service on these 22 routes. So essentially this is a way to bridge the gap so we don't lose service until such time where that item will get through the BCC process and be approved and continue forward for another 5 years.
So this would be a competitive bid with an anticipated let date of?
Yeah, so the new contract, yes, was competitively bid. It's going through the process now, and the date by which the new contract would begin is going to be subject to when that item gets approved by the board. I can tell you we asked for an additional year to have the flexibility to not disrupt any service during that time. So it could be such a time earlier than the year that we requested where the new contract would be in place.
October 23?
No, it's because we're asking from retroactively from February until for a year from February 2022. So it would be the beginning part of 23. Again, whoever is providing the additional service would have that ramp up time, and we anticipate that that new contract would start either at the end of this year or the beginning of 2023.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to support this because it's really a stopgap measure. There is a competitive bid to come out. And if we want to have a viable competitive bid, I think we still need to provide the service. I don't think it does anything to recommend that we not have the service, because all that's going to do is hurt the riders. So if there's no further, yes, sir.
I do have a couple questions. I agree with your sentiment wholeheartedly. I don't think there's anyone up here, or including the director, who wants to be in this position of having to make this decision today under these circumstances. Having it thoughtfully done in advance, I think, is to everybody's benefit, and I'm sure that's what we're going to see going forward. I do have some basic questions about some of the comments, the back and forth from the staff review. One of which, on the estimated, it looks like it's a labor and equipment fixed rate and then a variable fuel reimbursement. Is that a good way to describe this based on what I'm seeing here? And my question is the fuel based off of what rate? Today's rate? Are we expecting to see that line item be significantly different if it's based off of a previous fuel rate?
Good question.
Good evening, Robert Villar, Department of Transportation Public Works. The fuel cost, currently the vendor is fueling at county facilities, and so we're paying whatever spot rate is on the fuel.
Okay.
So whatever the market rate is, that's what we're paying.
My question is related to the $800,000 estimated fuel travel cost. What was that number based off of?
Oh, that number was based on the estimate originally, where the vendor, instead of us paying the vendor, reimbursing the vendor for fuel, that was the cost estimate for having the vendor come to our facility and fuel at our facility. So it was a time differential, and it was established, probably 4.5 years ago. So they're probably getting the short end of the stick at this point on that cost for fueling. Right, the amount that we're paying them to fuel, if we were to recalculate that rate today, it would probably be higher because the cost of fuel is higher, and therefore the time, not just the cost of fuel, but the cost of fuel and the hourly rate has also changed.
So then this isn't a reimbursement. This is a fixed cost.
So it is a reimbursement. So based on the time that they use, they bill our. They include it in the bill. So when they go to fuel, they include the time to go fuel, and that's the estimate there, but not the actual fuel cost. The fuel cost is a direct amount that the county picks up. So we're essentially using our county fueling account to provide the fuel. That number is the estimate of how much it's going to cost us to reimburse the vendor to go to our facility to fuel.
Let me ask it differently then, because there's a lot of, I think, complexity in that. Are we expecting this number to move up or down?
Not significantly.
I think that's helpful. Thank you. Additionally, on the reporting for issues, I know that we've heard that there's this meeting that happens regularly where issues are discussed and hopefully resolved. Is there some standard practice where we can see the types of issues that come through, are they consistently the same types of issues? Is there a root cause analysis that happens and a plan to execute? Because we're going to, you know, if we continue with this, we're going to be working with this for the next, I think, year minus 4 months that we've been into it.
Yeah, I have Joe Perez here, who's over our bus operations team for the department. And when we receive complaints, it usually comes in through a variety of different ways. It's through our 311 system, also direct calls and the like, and we try to respond to each and every complaint, regardless of who's providing that service. But Joel, you may have some more detail beyond that.
So what we do is we have meetings with the contractor 3 times a week on conference calls, and where we discuss all the complaints that come in. The majority of the complaints that would come in through a 311 system in the county. And those complaints are specifically discussed with the contractor for a resolution to them. At the same time, we have supervisors out on the field that monitor the service and provide random checks, and we provide staff to go out as basically as undercover riders, and they'll perform checks on the routes as well to get information and data. We concentrate them on the routes where the higher complaints will be coming in, and then we work with our staff depending on the type of complaint.
Are we seeing trends on these routes that are, you know, for example, if we see the same complaint coming over and over again?
One of the complaints that we normally see is some of the same complaints that we're seeing on our routes. Okay. Some of them have related to the on-time performance of the routes. So when we look at them, we look and see where they're at. We experience some complaints on, for example, some beach routes that, as you all know, due to the different activities that occur at the beach, sometimes those routes too are hindered by the on-time performance based on activities that are occurring during certain times of the day or the week there on weekends. And that's what we have been looking at, and we've been working very strongly on monitoring those and working with our planning division to see what adjustments could be made to those schedules for future schedules.
Okay. Thank you. And
you're welcome.
And lastly, on the competitive bid that's being worked on, does the CITT have an opportunity to review that?
Not typically. We don't get involved at that level of procurement. We see the contract once it comes to us for our recommendation.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
That being said, if I could qualify that, if there are things that members want to suggest that they consider as part of any procurement process, we could always relay that information. In fact, I think we've done that in the past with respect to commuter rail on the Northeast Corridor. So we could do that proactively if we wanted to, but we don't have an official role in procurement.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Member Schwepp?
And this is for the director. The only one of these routes that I have some experience with is 72, which I rode when I was in middle school and high school, which was a long time ago, and then more recently. But when I was in middle school and high school, those were run by Miami-Dade Transit. And so do you know anything about the history of, as to how or why these routes were privatized?
I know that decision was made before I was with the department, but what I've been told is that there was an attempt to counterbalance the resources on county routes versus what were considered not as high ridership. I hate to say low ridership routes, but ridership in comparison to other county ridership or other county routes, that the contracted routes made more sense to be contracted out, these 22 routes, as opposed to absorb those costs from having county bus operators operate those routes. So there, I believe at that time there was a focus to try to maximize the resources possible to get the best return on our investment and still provide the service that's necessary, even though it's contracted out. There's for these particular routes, some of these routes can be run at a lower rate, cost-wise, as compared to if the county were to take over those routes. So I think the decision was made at that time to ascertain those kind of lower ridership routes and contract those out so you can still maintain the service.
So let me have like a little bit of a philosophical discussion with you, because when I think of transit generally within Miami-Dade County, like I think of like stakeholders, right? So the riders are important stakeholders, not non-riders that kind of benefit from folks that decide they're not going to be single occupant vehicle commuters, but they're going to get in transit, which frees up roadway for people that have to drive their own cars. They're part of the community of stakeholders in transit. But then, those are good jobs, those county transit jobs. So we have, a whole community of people who are feeding their families working for Miami-Dade County a good job with appropriate benefits and a living wage, all of that. So we're cannibalizing those county jobs, right, by privatizing this. And I assume you, maybe tell me if I'm wrong about this, that the drivers that are driving for private industry, and this is not meant as a criticism of LSF, but any private industry, and these in particular, those jobs are not as high quality a paying job as what they are for county employees driving the routes.
So I don't want to besmirch any reputation here from some of our operators, but I would say that, of course, working for the county is a preferred job, right? And I'll leave my comments at that.
When I would bet you'll say our drivers are the best drivers out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean,
and working for the county is fantastic. So, this is a plug for us to get more operators because we're still in a crunch. But yeah. I'll leave it at that.
I mean, I just see this as an overall push to privatize public services, and it's kind of like once you get the camel's nose in the tent, it's hard to get it out, which is what we're seeing. It sounded to me like you thought we would be in a real bind if you couldn't get this contract approved because you don't have the capacity. I'm saying you, I mean the transit department, but you're the director, to take over the routes if the contract weren't renewed. Again, because the riders are an important stakeholder, then you don't want to visit any harm on them. But it does strike me if you're gonna take a public service that is typically provided by the public and privatize it, you want to get the best deal possible. So I don't know why you would ever waive competitive bid requirements if you're going to privatize whatever it is, 22 routes. You're taking good jobs away from county employees. You're turning it over to private interests, which they have a profit motive, which we're just providing a public service. So somebody's profiting where the government wouldn't be. Why you wouldn't want to get the best deal you possibly can through a competitive bid process, which I gather the county rules typically require for just that reason, right? I mean, that's why you put it out for competitive bids so you can get the best deal you can. Is that right?
That's correct. And again, what we're talking about is an extension to bridge the gap in time. There was a competitive bid process for the new 5-year term contract that will be coming through the BCC approval process. So I just want to make it sure that the trust understands what this item really is about.
But what I want to know is why, even if it's a bridge, why isn't your department? You just agreed you've got the best drivers out there. Why isn't your department saying, hey, we don't need private industry to do it. We can do it. Here's what we need to get it done.
So just the level set for a second here. So we have a current vacancy number of 162 operators. That means we are 162 operators short from our budgeted authorized number of bus operators. We have suspended routes today. In order for us to turn our suspended routes back on, we need to hire another 50 to 60 bus operators. On top of that, we still have a desire to implement a great project, which is a better bus network, which is about adding frequency to many of our routes, making us much more efficient. In order for us to achieve that, we need to hire an additional 200 operators. We often have a attrition rate where we're looking at between 10 to 14 operators per month that are leaving the bus operator ranks, whether it be to another county job, whether it be going to your FedEx or your UPS and the like. This is a never-ending cycle that we are trying to keep up with. So at this point in time, there is absolutely no way that we have the number of operators to be able to absorb additional routes, particularly when we're in a posture where we have suspended routes and we're trying to implement the better bus network. So that's just a reality we have to deal with, and that's why at the end of the day, this is really about providing service to the people that need it. And our job is trying to figure out how to balance that the best way we can. Of course, if we have enough operators to provide that service, we need to do that to protect those jobs and, again, have these very good jobs that basically creates I would say generational wealth down the road. So that's what the county is about. But at the end of the day, we have to figure out how to balance that with providing the service to the people that need it.
Do you know, and maybe this is a question for Mr. Llorente, whether or not these contracts have like living wage requirements in them so that the drivers they're hiring are paid a living wage?
Yes, they do have a living wage requirement.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Schwepp. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to make sure I fully understand what's going on here. So, what was the length of the contract with LSF that expired in February of 2022?
I may have to pull that up. So this.
It was on a year-to-year basis. It was piggybacked off the City of Miami contract, and it's been in place for 5 years.
I'm sorry, what was the beginning of that?
It was started in 2017, piggybacking off the City of Miami contract.
It was started in 2017, piggybacking off of the City of Miami contract?
Correct.
Okay, so I had a second follow-up question. So was the original contract with LSF between the county and LSF achieved or entered into after a competitive bidding process?
No.
Well, it was a City of Miami competitive bidding contract, and we piggybacked off of that contract.
If I may, this following what Mr. Perez was saying, the state statute and county procurement allows the county to piggyback, meaning access an existing contract that another governmental entity has procured through competitive bidding, so long as it's at the same terms and conditions. So that 55, whatever the per hour rate is, what is the dollar value of the City of Miami contract, and the county accessed that contract, those same terms and conditions. The City of Miami did publicly bid that out, and the county accessed that and entered into its own contract with LSF.
And then, okay, and then, so it's it's been yearly since, or was it a 5-year term starting in 2017?
It was a yearly renewal for us.
Okay, and then, so what happened? It was renewed yearly by the county.
Correct.
And why was it not renewed this past year? Like, why did it expire in February 2022? That's what I think I'm missing.
Yes, because there were annual option years under the City of Miami contract. That last option expired in February 2022, and so that was the magnitude of what had been competitively bid. As such, to go beyond that time period would require a bid waiver, because the procurement, which is under the cone of silence, there is a bid on the street, there are proposals, whatever. This bid waiver is to go beyond the time period that had been competitively bid to enable the procurement to be completed and a transition to the new contract. That's what this is.
And we don't know at this moment the new contract as of February 2023 will be with LSF or another company or whoever. We have no idea. That's up to the county to decide, or is that?
There will be a contract award recommendation, which will come to the CITT and the Board of County Commissioners. That award recommendation has not yet been made.
Okay. I think I understand now. Thank you.
You got it? Okay. Mr. Director, one final word. I'm glad we finally got to the need for manpower, because to me that's the crux of why we have the private routes. Private routes have kind of been in and out of the county for 30 years, maybe running anywhere from 5% to 10% of the routes. So it's been going on for a long time. I think now it's more critical than it's ever been because of the job market. He's got he could hire 200 people. If he could hire 200 people, we'd be at 100%. What's the starting pay for a bus driver? $40,000?
A complete compensation package is $53,000.
So $53,000.
Yes.
And we've got 200 openings. At $53,000, we have 200 openings. So that's really why we are here today. Do you have enough buses if you had 200 people? If you had 200 operators, do you have enough equipment to fully man the routes that you have privatized and the routes that I said you suspended routes?
Right. So yeah, we do have the equipment.
So you do have the equipment. You just don't have the manpower.
That's correct.
Okay. That's really all I have to ask. I just want to kind of understand where we are, where we are right now, and I hope we can do something to get the manpower shortage, whether it's training, whether it's other incentives, maybe instead of bus operators leaving to go to other county jobs, you can snag some other county employees to become bus operators.
I would love that, and
Not from the CITT. Please.
Actually, we're taking applications in the back, so anyone wants to come help us out. We are pulling out all the stops. I think I can't recall if the last time I was here, but we are offering $5,000 sign-on bonuses, as well as $500 referral bonuses for our staff. We are partnering with Miami-Dade College, the Career Source, as well as other entities to help identify eligible candidates that can come and be bus operators and work for the county. So we are doing a very aggressive recruiting, probably more than what this county has ever done, because we're in that kind of crisis mode. And we're not alone. Every single transit agency within the state and in the country is in the same boat, so we're trying to be competitive.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Mr. Director, can you tell us what the hourly rate is for a bus driver, the median rate for a bus driver on an hourly basis?
So our trainees are at $16.32, and then training. So when
after training,
after
they
training
finish
is
the training. They're already on the routes.
Yeah, it's a little over $18.
18.
Yes.
Somehow I heard the figure $23 an hour. Am I wrong on that?
No, that's we try to talk about bus operator compensation now in terms of annual compensation as opposed to hourly rate. So it was $53,000, but the rate that we have per hour is a little over $18 an hour.
Does that annual rate, excuse me, does that annual rate include the benefits, which are about 30%? The county has wonderful benefits. Does that include benefits?
That's correct. And then there's a couple of other adjustments for rate that's included in that 53,000 mark.
Okay. In the same breath, then, what's the hourly rate, the median hourly rate for the contractor? What does the contractor pay his drivers?
I do not have that information with me. I do know that we pay a living rate, but I don't have that information with me.
Would you say it's about you have no idea what they pay the
don't-
drivers, and
I
you
don't-
represent the company?
Correct. And I'm speaking publicly, so I hesitate to sort of put something on the public record and later be corrected.
Can we assume that it would be less than the county rate?
I think that's probably a fair assumption.
Okay, maybe that explains certain things. Thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Chair, if we could finish this up, and I wonder if we would
Make a motion.
I would move that. Look, I would move that we approve the resolution. If there's anybody that has an idea about putting in some reservations on this, adding some reservations to it, based on a discussion we've had today, based on on opinions that have been shared with among us, let's do it that way. Perhaps we have some caveats about this, and we can plug it in.
I don't believe you could do that with the actual item, so that has to be either approved or denied. But you could do a separate resolution urging or expressing concerns or
Whatever the mechanism.
But yeah, I just want to make sure you
Whatever
understand that would have to be probably two separate actions.
All right.
If anybody's interested in putting, with a comment or two or three, whatever, something constructive.
Yeah, not to, I don't want to diminish the comments that were made earlier, and obviously we just have just two viewpoints during public comments addressing, the services, particularly for those with disabilities. But I do follow this woman's Twitter posts quite frequently, and I'm aware of some of the instances that she's talked about, and I have no reason to doubt the veracity of some of the videos and the comments she's made. And so, I don't think that there's any question that these vehicles are ADA compliant. The question is whether they're functional and in good operating condition, and that's a separate question. They may have the capacity to transport wheelchairs and accommodate disabled riders, but what condition are they in on a day-to-day basis? Are they in good working order? And so, that's a question she had to be decided. But I support this item. Obviously, clearly it's a stopgap, and in no way do we want to, cause a cessation of service for all these routes. That's going to cause significantly more harm by voting it down. But I would like some sort of caveat or some sort of condition attached to our support that we'd like to see this vendor or any other engaged in the bidding process make sure that they make accommodations for all Miamians of all abilities.
Okay. Anyone else would like to be included in an additional resolution to express our concerns? But would I take the additional resolution after we vote on the primary one?
Yeah, we would probably want to take two separate votes. One would be on the item, and then the other one would be encouraging the board to consider accessibility or promote accessibility on these contracted out routes or whatever language the trust deems appropriate.
Okay. Well, I'll entertain a motion. Yes, sir.
No, I was just going to ask or inquire, I guess, if to incorporate sort of what Member Schwepp was saying, the suggestion that we're just encouraging the county to do or not do certain things with a contracted route assumes that that the county's going to keep contracted routes. And I understand everything the director said about the lack of operators right now, but maybe the encouragement can be go even further than if you are going to do contracted routes, make sure XYZ, but it would actually be better if you could not have privately contracted routes. I don't know, just throwing that out there before we move on with this one.
All right. Well, I mean, that's something we can include in I guess it would be an auxiliary resolution. So let's take the primary resolution. If I can get a motion, okay. All in favor of 7A, signify by the sign aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if we heard a second on that. I heard the move by Member Holtzman.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, all opposed?
I'm going to oppose it. So 1.
Okay. So it passes with a majority. What is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. All right.
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chair,
Please, sir.
that we adopt a resolution requesting that I guess the department evaluate the accessibility of the private routes for handicap riders and their compliance with ADA, and evaluate the feasibility of our wonderful transit department retaking these routes in the future.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Did I hear a second right away? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, Mr. Director, if you could work with the attorney and get the second resolution printed and
Will
forwarded.
do. Thank you, sir.
Okay, 7 Bravo. No, sir.